Okay, last lesson of this unit, probably also the most complex. This is something, there will be a single question on your test about this, okay? This is not something we're going to spend a whole lot of time on. The video is a little bit longer, but this is something that's complex, okay? So finding confidence intervals for standard deviation and variance. Normally we find a confidence interval for a mean. This is rare that we find this. I wanted to throw it in there though because it is something I think you ought to be exposed to. It uses a table called the chi-squared. Now it looks like a chi, all right, but it's pronounced chi-squared. And you will usually have to find two values, okay? You will have to find a left value and a right value. And we'll talk about how to find those in a little bit on the next page. I'll show you those. But this is finding confidence intervals for standard deviations and variances. So this has nothing to do with means. It's just standard deviations and variance. So how do we find these values? So usually what you're doing is you have this table, all right, and it says using alpha equals 0.05. Now, here's the key, is that we're finding two values. So we have to divide this in half. We're finding an upper value and a lower value. So this divided by half is 0.025, all right, which is this right here. Do you see that column right there? And then I want the upper value, which is 1 minus that, which is this column right here. Degrees of freedom is 1 less than my n value, so I'm looking in the 11 chart. All right, so all I'm doing on this one is I'm just finding the chi-squared left and the chi-squared right. So again, I split this in half, and I find, so I'm looking at 3.816 and 21.920. These are my two values that I will use for my formula. All right, so please keep in mind, I even wrote that down wrong, sorry. I was talking about that earlier. So this formula uses two different charts. You'll have to use two different numbers in your formula once we get there. So this right here, first part, was not that. All right, finding the confidence interval for a 90% when n is 25. So we need a formula first. Oh wait, no, this is just using the chart. I apologize, sorry. I thought we were already on the other next problem. So go ahead and look them in the chart. Here's your solution. Okay, so we go 1 minus that is 0.10 divided by 2 is 0.05. So we're looking at 0.05 and 0.95. We should have gotten degrees of freedom is 24, 13.8, and 36.4. You're just looking it up in the chart. All right, now actually doing the confidence intervals. So when you're doing confidence intervals, the formula looks very, very different. Please make sure you have this one written down. It's n minus 1 times s squared, which is your sample variance. So if this is the variance, we have standard deviation, square it, over the chi-squared right is less than the variance, is less than n minus 1 times the variance, sample variance, over chi-squared left. So we look up the two numbers in the chart, and we use this formula. So it says find the 90% confidence interval for variance and standard deviation for the lifetime of disposable camera batteries. A sample of 16 batteries had a standard deviation of 2.1. Assume the variable is normally distributed. So in this, we're going to plug those numbers into the formula. If I had a sample of 16, my n minus 1 is going to be 15. Now this is a standard deviation of 2.1, so I have to square it. Be very, very careful that as you're watching, as you're looking for the values and you're reading your problems, that you know whether it gives you a standard deviation or a variance. If it gives you a variance, it's already squared. Okay? So, ready? I just wrote down the formula again. I don't know why I did that. Okay, and I looked up the values ahead of time. I don't have the chart on here. Okay. So, n minus 1 is 15. 2.1 squared divided by the chi-squared right, which the value was 24.996, is less than the variance, is less than 15 times 2.1 squared over the chi-squared left, which is 7.261. Plug all of that in the calculator. and I get 2.65 is less than the variance, is less than 9.11. Now, to find the next part, the standard deviation, I have to take the square root of both of those numbers. So please make sure you do that. This is a little bit more in depth than the other ones. So I took the square root to get those two values. All right, this is a practice problem. Okay, so find the 95% confidence interval for variance and standard deviation of nicotine content of cigarettes manufactured if 20 sample cigarettes had a standard deviation of 1.6 milligrams. Use your charts. Also go ahead and look up and then plug the numbers into the formula. So here's your answer. Okay, again, we use the charts, we use the idea of 19 degrees of freedom, 95% confidence interval, so it's, you look those up. 20 minus 1 is 19, 1.6 squared, that gives me my standard deviation, square root of both sides, and I get, that gives me my variance, and square root of both sides gives me my standard deviation. So one more example, okay, now this one is